Okay, let's talk about something incredibly frustrating. You're deep in your work, you're in the middle of an intense game, and then everything just locks up. Your whole PC freezes. If this has been happening with your Windows 11 machine, I totally get it. It is just maddening.
But here's the thing, you are definitely not alone with this problem. It's actually a super common issue, and it happens to people with brand new, powerful, high-end computers too. The really good news though, there's a clear path to getting it fixed.
And that path isn't just a bunch of random tips you find online. Nope. It's a systematic, 7-step process that's designed to actually diagnose and solve this thing for good. So let's walk through it together.
So think of this whole process as a guided investigation. We're going to be smart about it. We'll start with the most common and frankly the easiest software fixes first, and then we'll move on to the more complex hardware stuff. For the vast majority of people, this method nails the problem early on.
First up, let's tackle the software side of things. These next 3 fixes are the real heavy hitters. Seriously, if you're going to solve this, there's a really good chance the solution is waiting for you right here.
Fix number 1 is all about the health of your system files. Over time, the core files that make Windows run can get corrupted, and that leads to all sorts of instability. We've got 3 powerful built-in tools to fix this. All you have to do is search for CMD in your Start menu, right-click on Command Prompt, and make sure you run it as an administrator. First, dism repairs the core Windows image itself. Then, SFC scans for any faulty files and replaces them. And finally, chksk gives your hard drive a thorough checkup for errors.
Now here's a really important heads up about that first command. When you run the dism tool, it might look like it's frozen. It can literally pause for several minutes with no signs of life on the screen. Do not panic, and please don't close the window. It's working hard in the background, I promise, just to let it do its thing.
Old or just plain buggy drivers are a classic reason for system freezes. So that brings us to our next big fix. Update everything. I'm talking your graphics card drivers, your storage drivers, all of it. Make sure you go directly to the manufacturer's website to get the latest versions. And here's a pro tip for you. When you run Windows Update, make sure you click into the optional update section. For some reason, really critical driver updates love to hide in there.
So what if it's not a corrupt file or a bad driver? Well, the problem could be 2 programs that just can't stand each other. Fix number 3 helps us figure that out. We do something called a cleaned boot, where you temporarily stop all non-Microsoft services from starting up. If your PC suddenly stops freezing, well, you've found your answer. You know a third-party app is the culprit, and you can then turn them back on one by one to find the offender. It's a brilliant way to isolate the real problem.
All right, we've tried the big general fixes. Now it's time to put on our detective hats. We're going to start looking for the specific, unique clues that your computer is leaving behind for us.
And our number 1 tool for this part of the investigation is the Event Viewer. The best way to think about it is like your PC's black box recorder. Every single time something important happens, especially an error or a crash, Windows writes it down right here. So by looking at the logs from right around the time your system froze, you can often find the exact smoking gun.
And this isn't just some theory. This works. For instance, one user kept finding these Event ID 11 errors popping up in their log. A quick search told them this was related to their storage drive. They did a simple SSD driver update, and boom, the freezing issues were gone. For good. The clue was sitting there, waiting, the whole time.
Now here's the ironic part. Sometimes, the very thing that's supposed to fix your computer is actually what's breaking it. Yeah, certain Windows updates have been known to cause major instability on some systems. So if your freezing problem started right after an update, it is absolutely worth checking your update history to see if you can uninstall that recent update.
Okay, we're now moving into slightly more advanced territory. We're going to take a quick peek at your system's core foundation, the BIOS or UEFI. Now, don't worry, this isn't as scary as it sounds. We're just checking a few key settings to rule them out.
The name of the game here is stability. First, make sure your BIOS is up to date. Manufacturers release updates all the time that improve system stability. Second, if you've done any overclocking or enabled a high-performance RAM profile like XMP, try turning it off for a bit. Just running everything at stock speeds is an amazing way to test if your settings are unstable. Oh, and here's a very specific tip for Dell users. Some people have found that disabling a setting called Adaptive C-States completely solves their freezing issues.
So at this point, we've checked pretty much every software setting and configuration possible. If the computer is still freezing, we have to face that final possibility. A piece of the physical hardware might be failing. This is the last step in our detective work.
To rule out hardware failure, you've got to test the usual suspects. Use the built-in Windows Memory Diagnostic to check your RAM. Go get your drive manufacturer's own tool to check its health. Ask yourself, is my power supply actually providing enough stable power? And finally, grab a free tool like HW Monitor and check your temperatures. An overheating computer is a freezing computer, for sure.
Okay, you have now gone through a really comprehensive troubleshooting process. You've been methodical, you've done the heavy lifting, and you should have a much clearer idea of what's going on with your PC. So, what's the verdict? What's the next step?
You know, sometimes the smartest fix is knowing when to call for backup. If you've tried every single software fix and the problem is still there, if one of your hardware tests points to a failing part, or hey, if you're just not comfortable messing around in the BIOS or opening up your PC, it is time to call a professional. And there's zero shame in that. You've done the hard work of narrowing the problem down for them.
So there you have it. We have covered the entire investigation, from a simple file scan all the way to deep hardware diagnostics. You now have the detective's handbook for solving system freezes. So the only question left is, what's the very first clue your PC has been giving you?